The gym was crowded that evening in Phoenix, the air buzzing with music, the clink of weights and the steady rhythm of people chasing their goals. In the corner, a woman named Kendra focused on her workout, calm and precise. Her movements were strong, confident. She didn't need attention, just focus. Then a man walked up, tall and smug, watching her like he had something to prove. "You're using that wrong," he said, his voice full of arrogance. Kendra pulled out one earbud, gave a polite smile, and said, "Thanks, but I've got it." He didn't move. He just stood there smirking, refusing to back away. The air shifted, a quiet tension filling the space. A few people glanced over, unsure what was happening. Kendra turned back to her barbell, trying to ignore him, but he wasn't done. He kept talking, throwing little remarks meant to bother her. What he didn't know was that this quiet, focused woman wasn't just strong. She was trained, disciplined, and far from ordinary. In a few minutes, everyone in that gym would learn exactly who they were dealing with. Kendra tried to keep her focus, but the man didn't take the hint. He moved closer, pretending to help, though his tone carried more ego than kindness. "I've been lifting for years," he said, crossing his arms. "You could really hurt yourself doing it that way." She paused, keeping her voice calm. "I appreciate it, but I know what I'm doing." Then she placed her earbud back in, hoping that would end it. But it didn't. Every time she switched stations, he followed. When she moved to the pull-up bar, he was there, leaning on the next machine, mumbling things like, "You're wasting your time," or "You won't get stronger doing that." People nearby started noticing. A few glanced over, uncomfortable but silent. No one wanted to step in, and that's how it always is. They just hoped it would end on its own. Kendra's patience was wearing thin, but her face stayed calm. Years of training had taught her not to react to pressure, to breathe, assess, and act only when necessary. But she could feel the weight of his words pressing against her peace. He wasn't just being rude. He wanted control, attention, power. At one point, she moved to adjust her weights, and he laughed softly. "You really think you're doing that right?" Kendra looked at him, expression unreadable. "I'm sure," she said simply. For a moment, the man seemed irritated by her calmness. He wasn't getting the reaction he wanted. No fear, no anger, not even annoyance. And that made him angrier. Around them, the gym's usual energy started to fade. The sound of metal weights and music still filled the room, but underneath it was something else. Tension, heavy and uncomfortable. People could sense it, even if they tried not to look. Everyone was waiting for someone to do something, but no one did. Kendra inhaled deeply, her mind steady. She had faced tougher situations, moments where losing control wasn't an option. This wasn't about pride. It was about peace. But even peace has limits, she didn't know it yet. But the moment was about to shift, and when it did, everyone in that gym would stop pretending not to see. Kendra moved quietly toward the bench press, hoping he would finally leave her alone. But she could still feel his eyes on her, sharp and heavy. The gym felt smaller now, the air tighter, as if everyone could sense that something was building. She wiped her palms, sat on the bench, and began setting her weights. That's when it happened. His voice cut through the music, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Women like you think you know everything, huh?" The sound froze the room. Conversations faded, weights stopped clinking, even the music seemed to quiet for a second. Kendra paused mid-movement, then slowly turned her head toward him. Her face stayed calm, but her eyes, steady and fierce, locked on his. "What exactly do you mean by that?" she asked. Her voice wasn't raised, but it carried power, the kind that demands attention without trying. The man smirked, lifting his chin as if to show dominance. "I'm just saying, maybe you should stick to what you're good at." A few people nearby exchanged glances. Some looked down, pretending not to hear. Others shifted uncomfortably, torn between curiosity and guilt. Nobody spoke. Kendra didn't respond right away. Instead, she looked at him, really looked. There was no anger in her expression, just quiet disappointment, as if she'd seen this kind of ignorance too many times before. Then, she placed her hands back on the bar and said softly, "You should be careful with your words." The man laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Oh yeah, or what?" For a heartbeat, no one moved. The air felt charged, like electricity before a storm. Kendra's silence wasn't weakness. It was warning. She wasn't trying to win a fight. She was trying to give him a chance to back away with his dignity intact. But his ego was louder than reason. He muttered something under his breath and shook his head, trying to look confident. Yet his voice trembled slightly. Maybe part of him already knew he'd crossed a line. People were now watching openly. A young man on the treadmill slowed his pace. A woman by the dumbbell rack stopped mid-set. Everyone could sense it. Something was about to happen. And in that quiet space, between his arrogance and her restraint, the moment broke. He stepped closer, his presence invading her calm like a shadow stretching across sunlight. Kendra exhaled slowly, her face still composed, but inside she knew. This wasn't about gym equipment anymore. This was about respect. And one way or another, he was about to learn what real strength looked like. The gym had fallen into an uneasy silence. People were pretending to focus on their workouts, but their eyes kept drifting back to the same spot, to Kendra and the man who refused to walk away. He stood close now, too close, his pride burning hotter than common sense. "You've got a smart mouth, don't you?" he said, trying to sound confident, but his voice wavered slightly. Kendra didn't move. She simply looked at him, her face calm, her breathing steady. "You need to calm down," she said quietly. There was no anger in her tone, only authority, the kind that didn't need to be shouted to be heard. But he didn't like that. People like him never do. He stepped closer, trying to reclaim the power he felt slipping away. "Don't tell me what to do," he snapped, his jaw tight. The words hung in the air like smoke, bitter and heavy. Kendra didn't flinch. She had faced far worse than this. In her years of service, she had learned that silence could be stronger than any weapon. And right now, her silence was making him crumble. A few gym members behind the counter started whispering, unsure if they should step in. One man even took a step forward, but Kendra caught his eye and gave a subtle shake of her head. She didn't need help. Not yet. The man, mistaking her calm for fear, took another step forward, close enough for her to smell the cologne mixing with his anger. "You think you're better than me?" he spat. Kendra's expression didn't change. "No," she said softly. "I just know who I am. And that seems to bother you." Her words hit him harder than a shove ever could. For a moment he froze, his arrogance cracking under the weight of her composure. Around them the room felt suspended in time. No one breathed. Then, as if realizing the crowd was watching, the man tried to save face. He forced a laugh, shaking his head, pretending it was all a joke. But everyone could see it, the shift. The balance of power had changed. Kendra hadn't raised her voice, hadn't moved an inch, yet somehow she was in complete control. And in that moment, everyone understood. Strength wasn't loud, and it was steady, quiet and unbreakable. For a long moment, the room felt frozen in time. The man stood there, chest rising and falling, trying to hold on to whatever pride he had left. But his confidence was cracking. The eyes around him told a story he couldn't escape. People had seen enough. They saw the truth, who was calm and who was out of control. Kendra slowly stood up from the bench, not in anger, but with quiet strength. She didn't puff her chest or raise her voice. She simply looked him in the eye, and something about that steady gaze made him take a small step back. "Listen," she said evenly. "You've made your point. Now it's time to stop." Her tone was calm, but it carried a weight that silenced the last bit of arrogance in him. He opened his mouth to reply, but no words came out. For the first time, he didn't know what to say. From behind the counter, one of the gym staff finally stepped forward, a young woman who looked nervous but determined. "Sir," she said softly, "I think it's best if you leave." He turned toward her, frustration flickering across his face, but there was nowhere left for him to put his anger. The people around him weren't on his side anymore. They weren't laughing, they weren't nodding. They were staring at him with disappointment. Realizing that, he exhaled sharply, grabbed his towel, and muttered something under his breath. Then, with a stiff jaw and lowered head, he started walking toward the exit. The door opened. A gust of cool air swept through the room, and then it closed behind him, leaving behind an eerie quiet. For a second, no one moved. Then slowly, someone clapped. It was soft at first, just one person, but then another joined in. And another. Before long, gentle applause filled the room. Not loud, not mocking, but respectful. Kendra raised a hand, signaling for silence. "It's okay," she said softly. "It's over." Her voice broke through the moment like sunlight after a storm. People smiled, some nodded, others just stood there, quietly processing what they had witnessed. Kendra didn't smile, didn't gloat, didn't celebrate. She simply took a slow breath and turned back to re-rack her weights. Her focus returned to her workout, just like it had been before. But the atmosphere had changed. The same people who once looked away now watched her with admiration. They had seen a different kind of power, one that didn't need to shout, threaten, or prove anything. Respect wasn't demanded that day. It was earned, through calm, courage, and absolute self-control. The gym slowly began to return to its rhythm, but the air still carried the weight of what had happened. Kendra walked to the water fountain, took a sip, and exhaled deeply. Her body was steady, but inside she could still feel the hum of adrenaline fading away. She wasn't proud, not in a loud way, but there was peace in knowing she had handled herself without losing control. As she headed to the locker room, people nodded at her, quiet gestures of respect. A few whispered, "That was incredible," or "You handled that so well." Kendra smiled politely but didn't linger. She wasn't interested in attention. She was interested in calm. Inside the locker room, she placed her gym bag on the bench. A few seconds later, the young woman from the front desk entered, the same one who had asked the man to leave. Her name tag read Tara. She hesitated near the doorway, then finally spoke. "Can I ask you something?" Kendra looked up, her expression kind. "Of course." Tara's voice trembled slightly. "How did you stay so calm out there?" "I was shaking just watching." "You didn't even raise your voice." Kendra leaned back against the wall, thinking for a moment before answering. "It's not about staying calm," she said softly. "It's about knowing you can handle yourself. Fear loses its power when you're prepared." Tara frowned, curious. "You mean, like training?" Kendra nodded. "Training, mindset, experience. I've been through worse. I served as a Navy SEAL for over 10 years. That kind of discipline doesn't fade and it becomes part of you." Tara's eyes widened. "That explains everything," she said quietly. "But still, most people would have lost it." "You didn't." Kendra gave a faint smile. "Because anger doesn't win. It only feeds the problem. Real strength isn't loud, it's controlled." Tara stood there silent for a moment, letting those words sink in. Finally, she whispered, "I wish I could be that brave." Kendra's gaze softened. "You can. Bravery isn't about not being scared. It's about standing firm when it matters." Her tone was calm, but it carried weight, the kind that stays with you long after the words fade. Tara nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for handling it the way you did. You probably taught everyone in that room something today." Kendra picked up her bag and smiled. "Maybe, but I hope they learned one thing, and respect is never optional." Days passed, but the story from that evening didn't fade. People at the gym still talked about it, not in gossip but in reflection. They spoke about the calm woman who stood her ground with grace, who never shouted, never fought, yet somehow changed the energy of an entire room. Her name, Kendra, had become more than just a face they recognized. It had become a reminder. Tara, the young woman from the counter, thought about that night often. She noticed how everyone had been frozen, unsure what to do. But Kendra's composure had shown her something she'd never seen before. That control isn't about overpowering someone. It's about mastering yourself. The video someone recorded from the gym quietly began spreading online. Comments poured in. "This is what real strength looks like. She handled it better than anyone I know. We need more people like her." But Kendra didn't care about the attention. She didn't see herself as a hero. She saw herself as someone who simply did what was right. Nothing more, nothing less. A week later, she returned to the same gym, wearing the same simple black leggings and tank top. The atmosphere was different now, warmer, more respectful. People nodded when she passed, not out of fear, but out of admiration. Tara smiled as Kendra entered. "It's good to see you," she said softly. Kendra smiled back. "It's good to be back." After her workout, Tara handed her a small card. Kendra opened it later that evening at home. Inside, written in careful handwriting, were the words, "You reminded me that strength isn't about muscles. It's about character. Thank you for showing me what it means to stand tall." Kendra sat quietly for a moment, the note resting in her hand. Her dog curled up beside her and she smiled faintly. This was why she never reacted in anger, why she never felt the need to prove herself. Because moments like that, the silent ones, could plant seeds that lasted a lifetime. She knew the man from the gym would probably never return, but in a strange way, even he had been taught something that night, a lesson about ego, respect, and how quickly pride can fall apart in the presence of calm strength. Kendra looked out her window at the fading sunset. She didn't need applause or validation. All she wanted was a world where more people learned that power isn't in aggression. It's in restraint, understanding, and respect. As she finished her tea, she whispered quietly to herself, maybe the world doesn't need more heroes, just more people who know when to stand their ground. And somewhere, someone scrolling past that video online paused to watch. Maybe they were struggling with their own silence. Maybe they were tired of being underestimated. But in that moment, they found something they didn't expect, a reminder that real strength isn't about fighting back. It's about refusing to fall apart when someone tries to shake your peace. Because true power isn't loud. It's calm, it's composed, and it's deeply human.